Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Gurukacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So once more, final time for those who didn't hear, Maharaj is not feeling well, so he asked me to give class. Hare Krishna. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service unto the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 4th day of July, 2021, in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Canto 5, The Creative Impetus. Chapter 1, The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. Text number 6. Now, some of you may be wondering why there's no verse. Because there's no verse. This is a big prose passage, which I'm going to try to chant, but there's no question of chanting in response. Can we close these, please? Thank you. Okay, here we go. And I'll record this. All right. Yarhi Vavaharajan Sarajaputraha Priyavrataha Padama Bhagavato Naradasa Chadanopasevayan Jasavagata Padamarta Satatvo Brahma Satrena Dikshisyamano Vanitala Padipalanayama Ayam Nata Pravada Guna Gunaikanta Bhajanantaya Sapitro Pamantrito Bhagavati Vasudeva Eva Vyavadhana Samadhi Yogena Samaveshata Sakala Karaka Kriya Kalapo Naiva Byanandad Yadnyapitad Apratyam Natabhyam Tadadikadanat Atmano Nyasmad Asatopi Parabhavam Anvikshamanaha. Okay, before I read the translation, we're not going to go through. Just contemplate for a moment. Sutta Goswami heard this when it was spoken by Shukadev to Pariksit, and he memorized every syllable and then repeated it later. So, just to see the incredible minds of these great sages. Okay. Translation. Shukadev Goswami continued. My dear King Pariksit, Prince Priyavrata was a great devotee because he sought the lotus feet of Narada, his spiritual master, and thus achieved the highest perfection in transcendental knowledge. With advanced knowledge, he always engaged in discussing spiritual subjects and did not divert his attention to anything else. The prince's father then asked him to take charge of ruling the world. He tried to convince Priyavrata that this was his duty, as indicated in the revealed scriptures. Prince Priyavrata, however, was continuously practicing Bhakti Yoga by constantly remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thus engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. Therefore, although the order of his father could not be rejected, the prince did not welcome it. Thus he very conscientiously raised the question of whether he might be diverted from devotional service by accepting the responsibility of ruling over the world. Purport. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Charya Vaishnava Seva Nistara Payeche Keba. Without serving the lotus feet of a pure Vaishnav or spiritual master, no one has ever attained perfect liberation from material bondage. Close quote. Prince Priyavrata regularly served the lotus feet of Narada, and thus the prince perfectly understood transcendental subjects in truth. Satatvaha. This is from the verse. The word Satatvaha means that Priyavrata knew all the facts about the spirit soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the relationship between the spirit soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that he also knew all about this material world and the relationship of the spirit soul and the Supreme Lord within the material world. Thus the prince decided to engage himself only in rendering service to the Lord. When Priyavrata's father, Svāyambhuva Manu, requested him to accept the responsibility of ruling over the world, he did not welcome the suggestion. This is the symptom of a great liberated devotee. Even though engaged in worldly affairs, he does not take pleasure in them, but remains always absorbed in the Lord's service. While thus serving the Lord, he deals externally with worldly affairs without being affected. For example, although he has no attraction for his children, he cares for them and educates them to become devotees. Similarly, he speaks to his wife with affectionate words, but he is not attached to her. By rendering devotional service, a devotee acquires all the good qualities of the Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna had 16,000 wives, all of them very beautiful. And although he dealt with each of them as a beloved husband, he was not attracted or attached to any of them. In the same way, although a devotee may enter family life and act very affectionately toward his wife and children, he is never attached to these activities. This verse states that by serving the lotus feet of his spiritual master, Prince Priyavrata very soon attained the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. This is the only way to advance in spiritual life. As stated in the Vedas, Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tathagarao tasyate katitayartha pakashante mahatmanaha. Quote, if one has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master, the essence of all Vedic knowledge is revealed to him. Close quote. This is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. A devotee always thinks of the Lord continuously. While chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, the words Krishna and Hare immediately remind him of all the Lord's activities. Since his entire life is engaged in the service of the Lord, a devotee cannot forget the Lord at any time. Just as an ordinary man always engages his mind in material activities, a devotee always engages his mind in spiritual activities. This is called Brahmasatra. That's another word from the verse. Or meditating upon the Supreme Lord always. Prince Priyavrata was perfectly initiated into this practice by Sri Narada. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we're continuing this beginning of the 5th canto, in which King Priyavrata, the elder son actually of Svāyambhuva Manu, is being requested to take up the duties of managing the universe. And he's already been trained by Narada Muni to practice Krishna consciousness. He's very advanced in Krishna consciousness. He only wants to hear and chant and serve the Lord. And his question is, he wants to follow the order of his father, but at the same time, he doesn't want to damage his Krishna consciousness. So he wants to be encouraged. How is this going to be possible to do both? Because the main entanglement, as expressed again and again in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is this family life. As Prahlad Maharaj famously said to his father, this verse has come up several times, his father, when Prahlad, the first time he came from the school, and his father wanted to know that he was being nicely trained to be a nice little demon, so that he could take over the kingdom and run everything nicely. So Prahlad had already been trained by this very same Narada Muni, who has a very prominent place throughout the Bhagavatam, in doing precisely this, of preaching exactly according to the needs of the recipient and turning one's mind toward Krishna consciousness. Narada is most prominent in that regard throughout the whole Bhagavatam. He appears throughout in every canto. Some of the other Mahajans you'll find have prominent places in one canto, and then they hear from him so much. So his father wanted to know, and the father is always affectionate, Prabhupada says. So he takes him on his lap, smells his head, and says, "What is the best thing you learned today?" And then famously, Prahlad says, "Tat sadhu manne." Now the word sadhu, this is something you can all remember, doesn't always mean a sadhu, a person who is a saint. We've described very nicely by Kapila Muni. But sadhu can also mean very good. Probably it's in one verse, this is relevant. Or often, bravo, bravo. You'll see when Krishna does something very wonderful, or a devotee says, "Oh, sadhu, sadhu." Now all the devotees, when we first heard that, they said, "Oh, they're calling him a sadhu," which is not completely wrong. But really what they're saying is, bravo, bravo, very nice, very nice. So he says, "Tat sadhu manye," the best thing, Father, in my opinion. Tat sadhu manye asuravarya dehinam. He doesn't call him Father, he calls him the best of the demons. Tat sadhu manye asuravarya dehinam sada sabudvignadiyama sadgrahat. So best for whom? Best for the embodied soul. That's all of us. But it's understood it's not best for those who are born in a Brahmin family, those who are, some designation. No, best for the living entity. who is always disturbed, samudnak diyam, consciousness, intelligence is always disturbed by asadgrahat. Now who can explain what asadgrahat means? Not a very difficult concept. Yes. Asat means that which is impermanent. They're always changing. And grahat means to hold on to. We have the word grab, graha, you know. A graha is a crocodile. So graha is an important word. So we have taken shelter of, we are relying on, we are attached to that which is impermanent, and this is the actual problem for the conditioned soul. Because this is what happens. Just think of ordinary life. Prabhupada deals very much with family life here. This is why Priyavrata wanted to avoid it. Because you're establishing all these very strong relationships of attachment and attraction. The wife, and the children, and Rishabdev will later explain in the fifth chapter of this canto, very important chapter. Prabhupada gave about 10 or 12 lectures just on that first verse. You read, if you follow his preaching, and when he was in India, wherever he would go and speak Bhagavatam class, he would give the first instruction of Rishabdev, which is all about renunciation and austerity. So, in one of his verses, he describes the basic principle of attachment and entanglement in this world. Punksas tuyamatu nibhavametang tayumato vridayagrantamahu. What is it? Say again? Ato grihach, thank you. Ato grihach cheta sutapta vittai janasimoho yamaham mameti. So, punksastriya, man and woman. This is the basic principle of attachment. Punksastriya mituni bhavam. When they get in the sexual mood, the atmosphere, you know. Punksa mituni bhavam etan tayo mato vidya grantamaho, and they actually engage in sex and they become attached to each other. A very hard knot is tied in the heart, vidya grantamahu, which then expands, assuming it's a regular marriage, some kind of civilization. You have atta, griha, cheta, sutta, apta, vitta, in this order. So the first thing is a place, right? So like an apartment, a home, a van, something. Griha, chetra. And then you need a way to support the family, assuming that you're going to, have some kind of civilization. So that's a chetra, which means normally, like civilization is built on agriculture. That's many people support themselves in that way. That's a Vaishya community. So a chetra means a field. So it's a field of activity by which you can support a family, either a job or a field, whatever, agricultural field. And then comes children, sutta, big entanglement, more worried about worrying and money, and everything, and attachment are coming, This is so it's sutta, and then you don't just marry a woman; you marry the whole family, right? In Yiddish, I don't know if anyone's Jewish, the whole mishpacha, means the relatives, the whole thing. So that's the apta, and then to support it, vittai, money. So this is what universally is going on, unless there's real animal life and there's enough family. That's another story. So, and then what's the result of this in your consciousness? Janasya. Janasya is a great word. You can easily remember. It means generate. Janasya moham, moho, complete bewilderment, characterized by tamaham mameti. That janasya moho yamaham mameti, characterized by the essence of the false ego, which is I and mine. I am this man, the husband of this wife, and these are my children, and this is my job, and this is my position, and this is my family. And I and mine. You completely identify with the bodily concept of life. So, this is universal entanglement. That's asadgrahat. So Prahlad is telling his father that this causes some udvigna diyam. The intelligence, the consciousness becomes always disturbed. And so Maya presents certain facilities for you to try to forget that, at least for a little while. All kinds of entertainments and drugs and parties. Saturday night. I always do my laundry on Saturday night. And because I usually go to the laundromat, there's hardly anyone there. Everyone wants to try to party on Saturday night. So the laundromat here, which is changing, I may stop using it. it's right around the corner from, Garnet, the heart of the whole thing, of the party. And now that COVID has started to decrease, everybody is out trying to have a good time, Now I'm chanting a couple of my rounds as I take my walk, and I'm watching all of this. And I'm seeing everybody's dressed to the nines, This is a party town is basically what it is, And so, hello, we're still under this pandemic. Death is right around the corner. Horrible things are happening. Buildings are collapsing in Miami Beach. Global warming is happening. 121 degrees in Vancouver. People are dying. In other words, there's all kinds of things to disturb the mind. But here we are. At least we can forget it for a few hours. Let's go party. We'll have dinner and get a few drinks and whatever else they're going to do. This is what Maya presents. Is a little sense gratification, or the idea of sense gratification, so you can forget the actual situation, which is we're all exactly like persons on death row waiting to be executed. That's the nature of this world, and all of our hopes and all of our dreams and all of our whatever building in the way of name and fame and everything, finished, destroyed, but we won't be destroyed. This is the other illusion. I said, well, okay, you only go around once in life, and so grab all the gusto you can get. You remember that slogan? A beer commercial back in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, Ed remembers. And what is this? Even a little logo. What is it called? You only go around once. YOLO. You only live once. YOLO. There's T-shirts for that. Just the opposite of what Krishna teaches in Bhagavad Gita. No. You're eternal. You live a lot of times. As soon as that essential first point of the philosophy is understood, your whole calculation of what's important, what to strive for in life has to change. If my life goes on and I live like an animal, I become an animal or an insect, I'm crawling around here, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to, create a whole lot of suffering for myself just for this little flickering sense gratification? But if you don't live again, hey, let's grab all the gusto we can get, In other words, even in this lifetime you can suffer from it, but that's the philosophy. So, Priyavrata has come to the point, he just wants to hear and chant. He just wants to completely remember Krishna. And he sees, rightly, that entanglement, and not just family life, managing the universe. I mean, we have trouble getting people to just manage a temple, And it's a huge burden. And so, it can be a very huge distraction. Usually is. So Priyavrata is reluctant, naturally. And notice how it echoes what happened with Daksha and his sons. Daksha also wanted his sons to become progenitors, so they went off to perform austerities. But there is that rascal Narada preaching his Krishna consciousness and trying to get them to give up their duty, and it worked. They were very smart, and he gave them an allegory. It was really like a riddle, which they immediately solved. And the conclusion is, there's a song, there's like 6 or 8 verses, and the last verse is the same in each verse. And I forget the Sanskrit, but it says, therefore, what use are fruitive activities? In other words, we're going to do this, And so they took off. They took sannyas. And Daksha was like, oh, it was Narada, he did it. All right. I have these other sons, these Shabalatsas, 1,000. You go and don't follow your brothers. You go and do it. Sure enough, the same thing happened. So you know what his solution was, Daksha? Daughters. Narada won't bother with them. So he had a bunch of daughters, and they became the progenitors. So that's happened. But here, it's not Daksha, but it's Svāyambhuva Manu, who's one of the 12 Mahajans. He wants to do it. But even he was, is the father, and so he was reluctant. But when Brahma came down, Brahma was the spiritual master of his spiritual master. And Narada is very deferential to Brahma. So on the encouragement of Brahma, and that you won't be completely entangled. The whole point of this passage is to teach us that if Krishna consciousness is powerful enough, then you can also be in family life, but you won't get entangled. And as Prabhupada, I heard this on a lecture, I never forget it. He was saying that, yes, the most favorable situations, brahmacharya, sannyas, and our great leaders are all renunciants, and that's true. But many of them also had family lives that then they gave up to become sannyasis, just like Prabhupada. But that after all, these great acharyas, he named Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they all had fathers and mothers. In other words, it's necessary for saving the world that there be Krishna conscious family life and that the devotees will be raised up. When Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the most, because Arjuna is doubtful that he can do Ashtanga yoga, and he was, a Kshatriya, he was involved in politics, how's he going to go off alone, and so Krishna says, yes, it's difficult, but it's possible by practice. And Arjuna is still doubtful. So what if I fail? I'll be like a riven cloud. I give up the material side, I failed in the spiritual side, and I'll have no. So no. Next life, you'll take birth in a family of wealthy family, pious wealthy family, so that you won't have to worry about your maintenance. You'll be able to take. Better yet will be, Brahman's family. Better yet will be advanced yogis, bhakti yogis. And Prabhupada points out in the purport, we had that. He says I had that advantage of being brought into, especially his father, he exalted as a pure Vaishnava who trained him, gave him the Ratha Yatra, the whole thing. So those pious, devotee families are necessary to bring up generations of devotees. Prabhupada was very eager for the Gurukul system like that, So it's not necessarily absolutely true that family life has to be a degrading entanglement that will block your Krishna consciousness. And in great, the Vaishnavas, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was the father of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was, as Prabhupada so nicely describes, he's in the family life, he had this job, as a minister. I mean, you can imagine that absorbed his mind for a certain amount. But it didn't wreck his Krishna consciousness. He didn't become fallen by that. And so that's what Priyavrata will eventually be encouraged by Lord Brahma to take up, and that's what this is all about. Now, Prabhupada goes, he focuses here first of all about serving the lotus feet of the pure Vaishnava. So he quotes Narottam Das Thakur's famous song, Charya Vaishnava Nisake Payachikeba. No one has ever attained perfect liberation from material bondage without serving the lotus feet of the pure devotee. So in a practical situation, okay, you're and this has happened many, many times in ISKCON society. You join, and you're a brahmachari for a certain period of time, and then of course we don't have that here so much, but normally there's some nice Vaishnavis around, so forth, and you want to take, you want to enter the Grihastha ashram. So you have to do it with the blessings of the Guru. The thing is, you can't just do it on your own, because that's a deviation. That's what this whole idea is here, is that one has to accept this principle. Without serving lotus feet of the pure devotee, no one has ever attained perfect liberation from material bondage. So this blessing of the spiritual master, and Prabhupada did that. When he came to America, he saw that many of his followers were coming with their girlfriends, Mukunda Maharaj, Mukunda Michael Grant, And so he had to perform the marriage right there in 26 Second Avenue. And it turns out, some of the greatest pioneers who helped this movement were those three couples who went to England in 69 or 68, I think it was. And, they performed tremendous austerities. I mean, they weren't like looking for jobs and, raising families right away. They were preaching. So the couples worked, did tremendous work and contacted the Beatles and that whole thing, So Prabhupada was very proud of them. I mean, he mentioned also, how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he sent some of his leading sannyasis to England to preach, and they didn't really get that far. Why? Because they approached the upper crust, They weren't about to get down like Prabhupada did right into the, Bowery and deal with, and actually try to reach out to those people who were receptive to it. Prabhupada, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers was asked, "Can you make me a Brahmin?" What was the name of that lord? Forget. Who is it? Jetland. And so he said, "Sure, why not?" You just follow these 4 regular principles, and he named them. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. And what was Lord Jetland's answer? Impossible. Impossible. This is our life. This is their life. They're not doing one of those things; they're doing the other. So Prabhupada, when he came, yes, they were also, the people who he was first preaching to, they were also, doing those sins. But they were receptive to the message, and they were receptive to him. They were ready to hear. And they didn't say it was impossible. Prabhupada said, no, it is possible by the strength of the holy name. He had this faith in the holy name and the power of the holy name. First get them chanting, and everything will follow. And it worked. It's not that everybody who chanted Hare Krishna then became initiated devotee and everything. But those who were serious about chanting and who were receptive, and a certain percentage did. And that percentage then were able to start the movement, and the rest is history. So the point is that the facility is there under rules and regulations to have regulated household life, and one can make advancement, But within the Vedic culture, there are rules and regulations, not forever. There's supposed to be a point where there's, vanaprastha, where there's detachment, there's no physical contact, and you're going to different holy places for purification. That's vanaprastha life. And eventually the wife is sent back under the care of one of the senior sons. Now, I'm not going to get into how this actually has worked out in practice in ISKCON, but that's the ideal. And the whole format means that there's a way to go through family life and have Krishna-conscious children, and then be renounced at the end and just preach or just take shelter of the holy Dham. So Priyavrata will do incredible duties within this management. You'll see as we go on in the chapter. But so many important principles are being mentioned here, and being faithful to the spiritual master, being very eager to continue one's hearing and chanting, to avoid attachment. The whole bondage is one of attachment. That ardent love, that prema, that's meant for Krishna, and that we experienced back when we were in the spiritual world. That same prema, when the living entity turns from Krishna and comes in contact with the modes of nature in the material world, turns into kama. And that's why it's such a powerful force. That's a spiritual force. It has to be directed one way or the other. And so the whole process of devotional service. Now, one thing I wanted to mention here, that Priyavrata, he became knowledgeable of the different, of who the God is, what the soul is, what this material world is, what the relationship is. This is exactly what is called sambandha gyan. And you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and you get to the teachings to Sanatana Goswami, which are the most detailed of all the teachings that that are displayed there. The Lord Chaitanya explains there's these 3 different factors in devotional service, progressive. One is sambandha gyan, then is the abhideya gyan, and then the prema, and then the prayojana. So sambandha, abhideya, prayojana. So these principles work in any endeavor that we want to do. Suppose you want to become a car mechanic, right? You can't just walk into the shop, open the hood, and start working on it, right? You need to become like an apprentice. If you're serious, you'll come under some experienced mechanic will show you, train you up, and you'll learn how things are related, what the carburetor is. Now they don't have any carburetors. In my day, all the different elements of the car, how they work together, sambandha, And then maybe you'll start a little bit here and there, easy stuff to do, So you're starting your abhideya, your practice. And as you go, implying those principles of sambandha to and your knowledge, you'll become expert in being a car mechanic. And you get to the prayojana, which is that, yes, you have your own shop, and you have your own apprentices like that, and you're a car mechanic. So in every field, it's like that. So it's like that in Krishna consciousness. The difference is that all of this is tremendously mysterious. Most people, if they believe in God, It's not that they have an ardent desire to know more and more about him and establish the relationship. They just, okay, there's a God. I was raised in this religion, and I pray to him for, that I go to heaven and forgive me for my sins, whatever, It's a very kind of official relationship. It's not a personal relationship. It's what bhakti is. It's the most important relationship, and everything else is understood through that relationship. So understanding what this world is, where did it come from? How is it being maintained? And we should understand there must be some intelligence behind it. Just see how complicated everything is. This is called the argument from design. This is from Western theology also. Was it Thomas Aquinas, I think, was putting forward this? And Isaac Newton famously, he made a mechanical model of the solar system. And one of his friends walked in. He was playing with it, and there's a Mars going around the Earth. Planets. I don't know if they knew all the planets yet, but there was. And so his friend said, "Well, who made this?" He said, "Oh, it just appeared." "Come on, Isaac, come on." He said, "Yeah, I put it together." So if you think it takes an intelligent person to put this little one together, don't you think the actual big one takes intelligence? His atheist friend, yeah, that made me think. So the argument from design is very powerful when you realize the complexity of this material world and our own bodies. How amazingly, as you get older, of course, they start to break down. But you realize how all these years it's been kept up, and self repair and all these different things. Come on, I mean, it's so complicated. It's incredible. Even in spite of all of the investigation, and everything, there's still so many mysteries about just how the human body works. So then the question is, well, whose intelligence is that? And how does that relate to me? In other words, these questions come up, and if you're fortunate enough to come in contact with someone who has the answers, namely a pure devotee, and someone who's giving the amnaya. Amnaya is the shastric knowledge, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, that comes through the genuine devotees who are not distorting it, who have realized it. And that's what we have with Srila Prabhupada. That's why everything has emanated from his efforts and his purity and his knowledge and his pure love for Krishna. And so how do we experience that most practically? Through his books. Prabhupada wanted us to read these books and study them systematically, because this is the foundation of our faith. It's the foundation of your faith. And also I would say, and this is something Bhakti Vikas Swami emphasizes, and I think I just want to introduce it, to try to develop a regular hearing of Srila Prabhupada's lectures. There's something about that voice, and the famous verse we read fairly recently in the 4th canto, that the very voice is carrying the saffron mercy particles from the lotus feet of Krishna. And when one hears that voice, the Shastra spoken by a pure devotee, it has an effect. It's just like someone is trying to convince you to buy something. But if that someone has actually experienced it and appreciated it, it has so much more power, because he or she is speaking with conviction. And so someone who's really realized Krishna, and just like you read the Bhagavad Gita, what really jumps out, when you start reading? There's no doubt here. It's not like maybe this, maybe that, It's absolute certainty, because it's from experience, tattva. So hearing Prabhupada speak, and has a tremendous. But it's a little difficult, the accent, whatever. I never had a problem, but it's worth the effort, and so we should integrate that. What the speaker reading his books, he put everything in them. So that is a very important way. That's why I say at the beginning of every class, I offer my spectrum basis to a spiritual master, who has opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. No, the Narayanam Namaskritya. After that, we offer obeisance before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which should offer respects to Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of God, and then to Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. And I don't just mean our in the royal we sense. It's not that I'm saying my spiritual master, who I'm fortunate to be initiated, but all of us. It's really important to read the first chapter of the CC. It's all about the spiritual masters. There's more than one. We have at least three categories that we know. Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. Vartma is a path. Pradarshaka is one who shows. One who shows the path, guru. Tyler, you go out there, you meet somebody, you give them a mantra card or a little book or something. Why don't you come to the temple? You've just become a guru. Vartma Pradarshaka guru. And if you're doing it sincerely, that will be part of your advancement. Oh, I'm going to help somebody to, take the first step in Krishna consciousness, just like I did. And we've all had that Vartma Pradarshaka guru. Somebody, we met somebody, Now, oftentimes, it comes in the form of getting a book, is the most common way. And the Vartma Pradarshaka gives you the book and introduces you to the Sadguru, the Srila Prabhupada, who is our eternal Shiksha Guru. That's another kind of guru, someone who you take instruction from, who's giving the Shiksha purely, maybe not, he doesn't know everything, but whatever he's telling you. Like I had a guy, I'm doing my walk, right? I walk up and back on Dawes. I lamented I didn't have a book with me. I'm going to carry something always. So I look at him, he looks at me, and he stops, and he says, tell me something. I'm dressed like this. I always go out like this. Tell me something. I got my beads and everything. And he said, well, you're not that body, you're a spirit soul, and give him the basic Krishna consciousness, And no, what he said, tell me something. I'm not happy. He says, I'm a doctor. You look a really young doctor. And he says, I'm a doctor, and you look in very good shape, good-looking guy, very together, not intoxicated or crazy. And he says, but I'm not happy. This is what he said. I said, this I can give him basic Krishna consciousness that I could. You're not that body. You could be perfectly happy. And then I told him, and this really shocked him. I told him, I've been chanting this mantra since 1973. And I'm 73 years old. And he said, you're 73 years old? You're 73 years old? I should have told him, yeah, you can chant Hare Krishna and you'll stay young. It'll be your best medicine. I didn't have that together. But the point is that, I don't know if it's going to fructify. I told him where the temple was. I think he already knew it. He was a resident here. But he was, he didn't want more than a little bit, So whether it works or not. But the thing is, the Vartma Pradarshaka Guru, the Shiksha Guru, and of course the Diksha Guru, the initiating Guru. And that is a special relationship. So Lord Chaitanya says, what does he say? Yare deke tahakara Krishna upadesh amara agyaya tare de desh. He says this to the Brahmin. Was it Kurma? Yeah, Kurma the Brahmin, who wanted to go with him. Everybody wanted to go with Lord Chaitanya. Vaidacharya wants to go with him. He said, no, you stay. No one wanted to leave Lord Chaitanya. So, no, you stay here. And on my order, you become a guru and deliver this. Whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna. Give them Krishna the instruction of Bhagavad Gita, and you tell everyone you meet. And in this way become a guru and save this world. And Prabhupada said this is a central principle of our movement, is that, we need many gurus, and at least we can act as these Vartma Pradarshaka gurus, which means we're preachers. And that is makes, Krishna is so happy with that. He says no one is dearer to him than the preacher. So that's really the bottom line, is that our whole point is to become dear to Krishna. By being selfless and trying to give others Krishna consciousness and serving Krishna with love and devotion, chanting purely, hearing, like that. So the idea is that in that mood, because Lord Chaitanya's process is so powerful, and because it's the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, which gives you the most intense attraction to Krishna, that you can be in practically any situation and be detached from it. The example is Lord Krishna, he's mentioned here, right? And he had 16,000, because 16,108, he sometimes says, yeah. And most beautiful goddesses of fortune, and they would all do everything in their power to attract him, and, like that. And he would play the role of the henpecked husband. He had 10 children by each one of them. Actually, 10 sons, 1 daughter, which is often not mentioned. And yet it says he was detached. Don't forget, that's one of the opulences. Vairagya is one of his opulences. So one can be within a situation that would normally be very attracting and attaching, but because you're so powerfully Krishna conscious, you remain unattracted.
But you deal in that situation in such a way to further everybody's Krishna consciousness. That's the whole thing. So Krishna was meeting the desires of these queens of how they wanted to serve him. And they wanted, to love in a certain way, and he's reciprocating. But you can leave at any moment. And then eventually, he arranged for the whole city to be inundated, and the Yadu dynasty had to go, when he's getting, it's amazing how, detached he was infinitely. And yet he was doing everything just perfectly for, giving people Krishna consciousness, instituting Dharma in the person of Yudhishthira, that whole thing with the Mahabharata war. And the other thing he did is enact his Vrindavan Leela so that his devotees can hear about them and become more attracted to him and dedicated. So this is our, this lesson here, the larger lesson is that, yes, even though household life can be very much binding and deluding or illusioning, if one is strongly Krishna conscious and is holding tight to the lotus feet of his spiritual master and Krishna, it can also be a facility for Krishna consciousness, for raising Krishna conscious children and preaching. There are so many wonderful householder preachers in this movement, including our very own Rajendanandana Prabhu. Classes are epic. All right, it's 8:36. I'm not going to need this long translation again. I think we got the idea. Any questions or comments? Where's the mic? Okay, it's right in front of you.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Prabhuji, I had a question from the yesterday's class, where Prabhupada is explaining in the purport that Krishna also puts impediments.
Yes.
Right? That Krishna puts impediments, and as a result, Jai and Vijay. And so my question is that, if that is Krishna's desire, right? How can it be an impediment? After all, we are here to serve him.
Yeah. That's true. But if you look at the actual example of what happened, that for Hiranyakashipu to really be a convincing demon, or let's put it that way, for Jai or Vijay to really be a convincing demon as Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha, they had to forget that they had been in Vaikuntha. To really get into it, in the mood, Krishna doesn't someone acting to be a demon. He wants someone to really feel like think he's a demon. Ultimately, no one's a demon. But for Krishna, for the pastime to unfold, Nrsimha and Prahlad and the whole thing, he needed someone who was really, thought he was Hiranyakashipu. So in that sense, on the larger sense, you can say, well, yes, this was a service. Krishna wanted to fight, right? And no one was going to fight with him in Vaikuntha. And so you need to come down. But while it's happening, the person who's playing that role needs to forget that he's actually a devotee. And so from one angle of vision, you say, well, okay, his service was stopped, at least from his own point of view. He wasn't, Vaishnava, he's just the opposite. So it's a special case, the example of that. And so I think for us, what we do find is that Krishna will suddenly give us challenges in our devotion, where if we're really surrendered, it's a test. And the greatest, most wonderful devotees are those who welcome those tests, as a way of proving how much they surrender to Krishna, knowing that it will strengthen your spiritual muscles. Just like we often forget, just to live the ashram life is practically inconceivable. Inconceivable. The 4 regs, that's the first thing. But losing the sleep, the first thing is the sleep. Like Brahmatirtha, I think I read he stayed over at the temple. And he said, they got me up in the middle of the night. What is this, 4 o'clock? And really you have to acclimate to it, right? Your body has to adjust to it and everything. But you realize that, oh yeah, that was worth it. Now, I get up in time, and actually I'm awake during Mangalartik, and you feel this is a rare wonderful experience to be able to regularly, greet the Lord, at this time. And there's a certain intimacy, to see Krishna. They're in their night clothes, as it were, very, ornate, but still. And so you feel, okay, I made a step forward there. And that can convince you that, you can become acclimated. Like I was amazed how quickly Alex learned the harmonium and the drum, But still, there was a point where you didn't know the drum, right? You weren't raised from childhood playing the mridanga, right? So he obviously had an affinity for it, And I'm always thinking, I never went through that. I had other things I was doing. When I joined, there were a whole bunch of drum players. They didn't need me to learn the drum, So even though I have some rhythmic, genetics, it never happened. So, but it's teaching us that we can become purified and acclimated to devotional service, even though it may seem difficult at a certain point. And then you can realize, oh, Krishna's helping me. He's encouraging me from within, giving the intelligence, And then it becomes nectar, just like it's described here, that he just wanted to hear, Lord Krishna's wonderful activities 100% of the time. Just study Prabhupada's life, He's always either, writing until 12 o'clock at night, dictating, and then meet somebody and giving a darshan, and meeting with writing his letters, constantly glorifying Krishna. And then, very reluctantly taking rest for a couple hours, getting up at 12, like that. He actually lived that. And so the idea that Krishna puts impediments in this, there's special cases, and ultimately, I think for us, we're not on that level. We don't want to become like Hiranyakashipu. We don't want to become like Jai and Vijay. We want to be careful not to offend great devotees. And we understand whatever impediments there are, I put them in there myself. That Krishna wants us all to be pure devotees. So those are special cases, But it is possible that one's service can be interrupted for some time for those reasons. But I don't think we have to worry about that. Krishna is encouraging us in so many ways, keep it up. But what we do have to worry about is offenses. Offenses are some things we do that are oftentimes very serious impediments. So we should worry about all those. Especially Vaishnava aparad, Nam aparad, Dham aparad, Seva aparad. We should know them and avoid them carefully. All right, it's getting a little late. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Next week, hopefully, Badrinaran Maharaj will be back on his